Hi, I'm Dave, welcome to the channel. I thought this week we might talk a little bit about setting up the front of the car, more specifically the guide blade and the braids. And I'm going to use Slotting Plus parts because the car I'm going to use has got a Slotting Plus guide fitted to it. And it is of course the NSR Fiat 500 Abarth that featured in a video on this channel 2 or 3 weeks ago now. I did fit a Slotting Plus guide in it in that video. And it runs okay, but there are a couple of places on my track where I've got kind of sharp incline changes. So as the car goes over those, the guide sort of loses a little bit of contact with the track. It's not perfect, so we can improve this. And I'm going to improve it by changing the braid I fitted previously for this 035 Slotting Plus braid, which I find works really well on my track. And on top of that, I'm going to adjust a bit of the front height using some Slotting Plus spacers specifically designed for the guides. So tools you will need for this: a pair of side cutters, a small flat file, optional, and obviously a crosshead screwdriver. And say it with me guys, a cup of coffee. Cheers. So we'll get the bottom off this car. And if I take the main screw that holds the guide in to the chassis out, if that makes sense. We can see the guide is kind of free to move there, so that's fine in itself. I've used crossed over wires to add a bit of spring to get the guide to self-center a little. The front axle on these isn't as such adjustable, it just sits in a slot and is able to float up and down sort of willy-nilly. So the only thing we can adjust really here is the guide. So I'm going to use a setup plate just because it's a nice flat surface and it allows you to see what's going on with the front wheels. And the idea is that the front wheels should only really just about be touching the surface of the track. What I've got there is too much touching the surface of the track. So we need to lift the guide up because we can't really adjust the axle. And while I'm here, I'm going to pull the braids out, of course. Need a bit of braid, have a rough idea. About that long then. Twice. And now the fiddly bit. Trying to put the pins back in with the braids into the guide. For somebody with clumsy old sets of thumbs rather than fingers like me, it can be a bit of a pain. So nice new neat set of braids there, all nice and straight and lined up. And now we need to set a little bit of height on this post. Bit more coffee first though, cheers. So I'm going to start with a 0.20 spacer. And this is where the little file comes in, because when you take that off the sheet of spacers, there's a little burr on there and it might catch, so it's good to just file it off, make sure it's okay. And slip the spacer over the post on the guide, and that should help push the guide further away from the chassis of the car by 0.2 millimeter, funnily enough. So we can check this again on the setup plate. It's okay. It still could be a little bit more free play with that front axle. It's not far off though. But I'm going to add a 0.1 as well, and we can try it. And the idea is, I suppose, you try a few, add a bit, see if it works, take a bit away, you'll find the happy medium. I can't tell you what that's going to be. It kind of just depends on what sort of track you've got, how bumpy it is, if you've got different inclines, and every track is different. So I'll put the shell back on here and give it one more check over on the setup plate just to see I'm happy with how much, or at least how little, those front wheels are touching the ground. And now off to the track. And for once I'm not going to put music behind this bit of track video or talk over it too much. The idea is just to hear how quiet and smooth the car actually is. So there's virtually no chatter from that front axle. It's sitting just where it needs to be. And if it's not chattering, it's not causing a vibration, which means the car is handling better. This is what we're aiming for when we talk about front end setup. Some cars you get 4 grub screws and you can adjust the axle height itself independently. Other cars you have to play around a little bit with the height of the guide blade just to get it set fine. So there we are. Thanks for watching another one of my videos. If you liked it, you'll find a button specifically for that. Of course, please subscribe to the channel because it all helps. And if you hit the bell, you'll get notifications the next time I upload a video. And of course, check out this Slot Car channel. Now, I think he's got more subscribers than 93 now. It seems to go up very, very quickly.